Now you're looking to buy property, but you have this headache of a question that you need to answer, right? Or this decision that you need to take. Are you taking 20 years or are you taking 30 years? Because the idea is to buy this property using the bank's finance, right? So this is a question that is really is problematic for a lot of people. And I understand why, because there are so many informations around this that you don't even know which one is the best. But here's the fact. If you take the longer period, which is 30 years, in South Africa, our longest loan term when it comes to home loans is 30 years. So if you take 30 years, of course, your interest is going to be high. How is that possible? Is that if now you're going to be paying that property until 30 years, right? So meaning that if they give you that term of 30 years and it takes you 30 years to pay, you are going to pay a much higher interest than if you're taking that property and bought it or took that term loan at 20 years. It's a fact, like that is the fact, right? So the sooner you finish paying it off, the lesser the interest that you pay. It makes sense, right? But here's my thing. Now, if the idea is to buy more properties, if you want to invest in property, so meaning that you want to leverage as much as you can, so you want to use the banks as much as, like you want to milk the bank, you want to milk them as much as you can. My thought process is always around taking the longer term, because the beauty about property is that you can take a longer term, but you can still pay as if, for example, you can still take 30 years, but still pay as if you're paying for 20 years, right? It really is not a problem. And that's the beauty about the home loans, that you can play around with it like that. And here's the other thing that I normally talk about, is that, when you under-promise but over-deliver, because for me, that's the case. So if now I take 30 years, I feel that I'm under-promising, but I can end up paying more into my bond. You get what I'm saying? So I can pay more into my bond, which is great. And that's where your access facilities come in play, because then I can be able to activate my access facility. So if now my bond is 2,000, so that's what my repayment amount is. I'm supposed to pay 2,000, and then I go and pay 3,000, right? So technically, so you see, because it's 30 years, maybe it's 2,000, but if I'm paying for 20 years, it's 3,000. Because remember that the shorter the term, the more the repayment, right? So now if now I'm paying more into my bond, if I'm paying more into my bond, then I have this as access facility activated into my bond, then it means that the 1,000 that I'm paying there, which is extra, could then become a surplus that then becomes liquid. It means that it's available to me whenever I want to use it. Because remember, as a property investor, your idea there is to grow your portfolio. So you want to leverage as much as you can. So the more you use the banks, the more you are buying these properties, the more these properties, they appreciate in value, or they give you cash flow, depending, of course, what your strategy is all about. So for me, that's very critical. What also is critical for me, and coming from COVID, is that we also need to be mindful of the fact that things happen along the way. Life changes. There's events that are unforeseen, like, for example, COVID. We didn't, so a lot of us didn't see it coming, right? So maybe people saw it coming, but we didn't see it coming. So it was here, and now you need to adjust. Now, all of a sudden, there were salary cuts. People lost jobs. So what happens in that regard? So I rather than take a longer term in terms of my bond, and knowing that I can pay extra, so that buffer, which is the extra surplus that I'm paying, then it can basically become my emergency fund even though, which is good, it reduces my interest. So you see, it's a double opportunity kind of scenario, because at the same breath, if I'm paying extra into my bond, I'm then reducing my interest. But at the same time, because I have the access facility, then it means that the surplus that is there is then available for me for emergencies. If all of a sudden now COVID hit and now I had to take a 25% salary cut, of course my house is my biggest asset. So then I need to keep it as much as I can. So then I was able to go to my access facility and be able to take some funds until I can be able to get back to 100% salary at work. So you see how those kind of things help you, so for me, it works that way. But the other thing that I also want to touch on, especially if now the idea is you want to keep buying more properties, is the fact that we are getting older, especially if you are buying under your personal capacity. So if I'm buying under Gavin, so I'm buying under Gavin. So Gavin is getting older and older. So now the older I get, the more riskier I become to the banks. So I become riskier to the banks, right? Because now at the end of the day, I'm getting older and older, and to the banks, I'm getting to that point where I'm gonna be gone. So now at the end of the day, how they're gonna get their money? All right. Yeah, there's insurance and all of that, but it just becomes much more riskier. So it becomes much more difficult now to get the kind of terms that are favorable, because remember that it's a longer term, then you are paying basically less. But now if all of a sudden, because I'm older, they can only give me 15 years, they can only give me 10 years, then it means now my repayment amount becomes very, very big. Yes, you might look at it and say, but Gavin, that's wonderful, because then it means that you can finish paying off this bond in 10 years. Yes, but remember that I also have a life. Life is continuing. Things are happening, unless if I have the money, because we are not all on the same kind of financial position, So some of us, you look at the 10 years and then you look at that the bond repayment amount, and it just becomes ridiculous. So you always need to understand that. So leverage as much as you can, and that's what I say. Leverage. So use the bank. It's like a cow. You milk it. You just take out that milk as much as you can, because it's gonna get older, and then we will find that at the time now you can't get the milk from that cow. So rather than milk it what you still can, and be able to leverage, especially if the idea is to get as many properties as possible. So do that while you still have the chance, while you still have the affordability, and while you still have that income base that can then be able to produce that salary slip that you can take to the bank and say, look, this is where I work, this is how I make money, and then they can be able to grant the bond based on that income source. So that's very, very important. So I thought I should be able to do this video and just be able to just give clarity on it. But again, I just want